Severe storms are rolling through the south while a blizzard is unfolding across the plains. A wild week of weather is underway with hail, high winds, heavy rain, blizzard conditions, and even tornadoes are possible. I'll tell you who, what, when, and where. Plus, we'll take a look down the road. I'll have today's trivia question and a message from a brand new sponsor, and you're not going to want to miss that. So buckle up, because if other weather outlets run 24/7, we'll do it 48/14. So wake the neighbors, turn up the volume, grab the Orville Redenbachers. A new episode of Cold Rain's Weather World starts right now. Hello again and welcome back to the channel. You are here for another exciting action-packed edition of Cold Rain's Weather World, where we talk about the current weather as well as any impending weather events that are set to impact the United States. And boy, do we ever have one of those today. My name is Jason Pritchard, your host, your showrunner, your grand facilitator for this fun adventure we're about to embark on. We've got one hand on the wheel, one foot on the gas, and we are about to slam down into overdrive and take off. Before we do that, please consider subscribing to the channel. It'll help us grow and reach more people. Leave a comment in the comment section. It could be a prayer request. We want to pray for you if there's something going on in your life. We want to lift you up in prayer, so I'm happy to do that. If there's a comment about the show, a suggestion, a question about the weather, leave that down there too. And hit that like button, and if you like the show, and then share it with friends and family. That'll all help us reach this, help YouTube push this out to more people. We can reach a broader community and build this up. So that's what we want to do here. But today we've got a lot to talk about. So what do we have on the agenda? We're going to start with a quick weather roundup, and then we're going to dive right into our severe weather threat. We've got severe storms out there right now that's going to continue to increase throughout the afternoon as we get into tonight, and that severe threat is going to then shift onto the east. We're going to take a look at that. We're going to then switch gears and take a look at the cold side of the storm, where blizzard-like conditions are unfolding across the Midwest and up into the upper Great Plains. We're going to look at all of that. Heavy snow, high winds associated with the cold side of the storm. This is a very, very strong storm system, folks. And then we're going to take a look at the general wind threat. So even outside of cold, snow, and severe weather, we're going to see high winds across much of the country, and we're going to look at all of those things. Then we'll take a quick peek at the long range. We won't spend a lot of time there since we have so many other things to get to, but we will take a look down the road and see what's going on there. But we are going to start with today's trivia question, as we always do. So let's take a look and see what our question is, and it is appropriate today. And by the way, I'll have timestamps in the description section of the video, so you can skip right to your favorite part. Don't skip too far, you'll miss something important, and we'll have a little bit of fun along the way too, so you don't want to miss that. But you can skip right over to the part that's important to you. But we're going to start here with the trivia question. What is the most powerful type of lightning discharge? It's appropriate for this week since there's so much thunderstorm activity out there. So the possible answers are positive cloud to ground lightning, heat lightning, intra-cloud lightning, or spider lightning. You don't want to get bit by that one, so be careful, and we'll have the answer at the end of the show. If you know it, go ahead and type a comment in the comment section. And by the way, in the comment section, I have a pinned comment, and since daylight savings time is coming to an end, my question is, do you think we should abolish daylight savings time? There's been a lot of talk about that in the news, and so I'm curious as to see what your thoughts are. My answer would be no, but type a Y for yes, an N for no. I like daylight savings time. I like when it gets dark early. I know I'm in the minority there. People are going to at me and destroy me in the comment section probably, but I like it when it gets dark early. That's just me. Tell me what you think. Y for yes, should we abolish daylight savings time, or N for no? And also leave the answer to today's trivia question if you know it. So we're going to start here with our satellite picture. We usually start with the satellite just so we can get an idea of what's going on. About 75% of the country has been, is being, or will be affected by the system. And look at this thing, man. It is massive. You've got some lightning going off here with storms from Texas up into Oklahoma, parts of Missouri, even over into Illinois. You've got lightning associated with a lot of this thunderstorm activity. You've got this storm system winding up here over the plains, large fetch of moisture coming out of the Gulf of cold rain, and cloud shield is spreading over the entire eastern half of the country. In the backside of the storm, you've got the deformation band that's going to set up, which is just a strong forcing in the cold sector that's going to create a huge band of snow that pulls up from Nebraska to Kansas into Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, up into the UP of Michigan. That's going to deliver heavy snow and high winds, so blizzard-like conditions. And then out in the Pacific, you've got another storm system off the coast moving in. We're in an active pattern, no signs of that ending anytime soon. So the radar image, very, very similar to the satellite imagery. You've got this big storm system sitting in the middle of the country. You've got this massive shield of rain and thunderstorms, a lot of severe storms being warned along this line here in Texas and Oklahoma for high winds. We've seen some wind reports over the last couple of days in excess of 80 miles per hour. Today, I think the wind reports have been more in the 50s and 60s so far, but lots of jet dynamics at play here, lots of low-level wind energy to be tapped into by strong storms that may develop. And so we'll see how that plays out, but there's the potential for a big-time wind event across the South, snow breaking out in the cold sector, that storm moving into the Pacific Northwest, and then you've got some snow in advance of this system, mostly up in Canada where it's cold up here. But then you've got these little clusters of storms moving out of Missouri into Illinois, out of Illinois into Indiana, and so forth. So this system is very dynamic, and we're going to take a look at the various pieces of it that are going to affect different parts of the country in different ways. Now, we look at our temperature map out ahead of the system. Look at this. 40s, 50s, 60s, even close to 70 down along the Gulf Coast, surging out ahead. This is the what we call the warm sector, the warm side of the storm. Still very chilly up here in the Northeast. So you folks up in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, New Jersey, it's chilly up here in the 30s and 20s as you get on up toward the border, but nothing like we saw yesterday with highs in the single digits and teens in some places. And then it's chilly behind the storm. So you folks out here in Kansas and Nebraska, you may have already seen your high for the day. As cold air works down the backside of the storm, you're seeing cold air funnel in. Of course, the Rockies are cold, but it's just going to be cold here in the West today. Not going to make it up to too far. If we look at our, I thought I had a high temperature map on here, but I don't. Maybe I have that at the end. Is that? Yeah, there it is. I put that in the wrong spot. But here's our highs for today. As you can see, kind of represents what I showed you a while ago. So up the 40s, 50s, some of these highs have already been seen for the day, and you'll plummet here as that cold conveyor belt sort of works in on the back of that storm. Warm sector, 60s up to 70s down here along the coast, even some 80s in southern Texas. So those are your highs for today. Now, if we look at our hazards map. So check this out. This is lit up like a Christmas tree. The other day, a couple of days ago, this had died down a bit, and you've got a multitude of warnings here. Winter weather advisories in this purple, winter storm warnings in the pink for heavy snow. This red is blizzard warnings. So you've got blizzard warnings back here in Nebraska, down into Kansas, portion of Colorado, and then blizzard warnings again up here through much of Iowa, southeastern Minnesota, back into northeastern Kansas. And so all of this gold here, these are high wind warnings for gusts potentially up to 60 miles per hour or even higher. In some of these, got a blizzard warning here I saw with gusts potentially up to 70. That is destructive. That is a destructive blizzard, folks. And then down here in South Texas, where you're not seeing a lot of rain, you're seeing a lot of wind and dry conditions. And this really exists all across the South. Red flag warnings, those are confined here, but you've got high winds and dry conditions, so do not burn in this area. Wildfires can start and spread quickly, and that's what this is. And all of these other brown areas, as I suspected yesterday, this blizzard warning now is in effect over here. This wasn't here yesterday, but I thought that it might occur since we have this potential for strong winds. And then all the way across the country here, you've got wind advisories, and more wind advisories are going to be issued. I thought that would happen yesterday, and it certainly has, given the wind fields. So that's the current state of things. Now, the National Weather Service has issued severe thunderstorm watches and tornado watches. This is a radar out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you can see this entire line of storms from, essentially Fort Smith all the way down to down here into north, essentially northeast Texas, and even down into Texas is warned. You've got a little tornado warning there. It looks like Texahoma there. And so we're seeing some spin here with this particular system, but most of these are just severe thunderstorm warnings with the potential for gusts into the 60s. So keep an eye to the sky if you're in Texas and Oklahoma this morning. If we look at our severe thunderstorm watches, let's go back over here. So this is a tornado, actually, a tornado watch in effect for Oklahoma into Texas. And so we're seeing all of that activity. Sort of the northern section of this is kind of winding down a little bit. You can still see some punch to the southern section. This is set to expire at 11 a.m. You see the warnings, though. The warnings are all up and down just because the wind field is so strong and that those winds can be transported down to the surface. If we look here at the severe thunderstorm warning that's in play, that's for Oklahoma, Missouri, and Arkansas. And so we're seeing all of that. So down here, Texarkana, you're seeing more of that in the way of that storm activity with that little spin up that we saw a while ago in terms of the tornado warning. So that's what we've got for watches that are currently in effect. We'll expect to see more watches as we go throughout the day. Slight risk, large area of the south into the lower Mississippi Valley, over all the way into western Georgia, with a slight risk and enhanced risk when you get down into Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, southern portions of Alabama and Mississippi, and then a marginal risk for severe weather, even as far as Iowa into Illinois. So you all could see a brief spin up of a tornado or some hail. The threat's a little bit different in this area. You've got cold air aloft, which is creating some destabilization. Down here, the air is not quite as cold aloft. It's a little less impressive in terms of decreasing temperature with height. But you make up for it with strong shear and low-level moisture feed in off the Gulf. So the threat is maximized over the south, minimized over the north, but non-zero. So pay attention, and then general thunderstorms where we could see lightning in this green area. The tornado threat today, 10%, and then you've got this 10% hatch. The hatched is just stronger potential potential for stronger tornadoes. So where you see this 10%, you've got 10% chance of a tornado being observed within 25 miles of a point. The same is true for this hatched area, except within the hatched area, conditions exist for stronger tornadoes, EF2 or higher. And so that's what we see here. The wind threat is very similar. So in the hatched threat, you could see gusts well over 60, maybe 70, potentially 80 miles per hour if conditions come together right. But anyway, a 30% wide area of 30% chance of wind damage. So keep your weather radios charged and handy. Pay attention to local alerts this afternoon. I suspect we're going to see watches and warnings issued as we get into this afternoon, evening, and tonight as this line of storms rolls through this area, producing all kinds of weather hazards. So be weather aware. Tomorrow, that threat shifts to the eastern seaboard, and this slight risk has gotten larger every day. Now it extends almost up here into Lake Erie, and so we've got this big area of slight risk. This enhanced area has been added to the eastern Carolinas, southeast Virginia. That just got added overnight last night into this morning. And so it looks like we're going to see a little bit better moisture return here. Certainly, we've got a lot of turning with height of the winds, and that is a key ingredient for spin, for sustaining, for rotating updrafts, which can lead to tornadoes. So we're going to watch this area here in Eastern Carolina. In the Eastern Carolinas, we got a 5% tornado risk, a 30% wind risk with a hatched area again, meaning substantial wind gusts could occur in this area. Even back in here into the mountains and the foothills, don't let your guard down, even though you're not technically in a slight risk. You could still see a severe thunderstorm, and the background winds are going to be really strong regardless. So we're expecting everybody to see a line of storms come through. It could be weaker in spots depending on when the line comes through. And then some spots could really be under the gun with high winds. Now, what's driving all of this? So we've been looking at the last few days, we've been looking at the ingredients necessary for storm formation and storm maintenance in severe weather. And some of those ingredients, and I want to say nobody's excited about seeing severe weather. Nobody's wanting to see destructive storms and tornadoes move through the area. If you see people posting a lot of these images on social media, most people aren't excited about destruction, but there are a lot of ingredients that come together, and a lot of us want to communicate those ingredients to you and let you know what the threat looks like, and when you can let your guard down and when you can't. So right now, keep your guard up because ingredients are kind of coming together, but there are some question marks, as we've been talking about. There's some limiting factors, and so we have to understand what factors are necessary so that we can then understand how much of each factor is actually going to be present. One of those factors that we look at is low-level moisture. In order to create thunderstorms, you have to have an environment that is unstable, that would get the air rising up, and the stronger, the faster, the harder that air rises up, the taller the cloud grows, and the more dynamics in that cloud can essentially create different types of weather hazards, right? So small, little, tiny, weak updrafts don't give you a strong thunderstorm. When you have good low-level wind fields like we have with this particular setup, you really don't need as strong of a storm to tap into that and bring those winds down and bring that momentum down to the ground. But in this case, we're going to look at a few things that kind of are coming together to put this threat into place. So dew points, we need low-level moisture. That's one ingredient. And do we have it? Well, we have it over here in Texas. We're going to start here at hour 3. That's 9Z, so that's about 3 a.m., 4 a.m. in the morning today. And so look what we've got here. We've got 60s out here. This was an earlier model run. That's why it's so early. We've got 60s and dew points in the 60s. That's good. When you start to get dew points into the 60s, that's pretty good moisture return. Dew points in the 70s, even better, but still, that's good moisture return. Very, very dry over here in the rest of the southeast. But look, as we put this into motion and we move on through the day to day, see that threat we talked about shifts down here into Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana. You see these dew points coming in. So really, when you get down here, this is where the best moisture is over in this area here. Let me get my pen so I can draw this for you. I want you to see this. This is really important. This is what's going to make or break tornado threat down here today. So you've got this low-level moisture field coming in off the Gulf. These 60s, dew points in the 60s and mid 60s. You see that? That's where we're going to maximize low-level moisture and fuel with turning in shear and all of those things. So that's this would be, in my opinion, the best area to see stronger and more tornadoes if we're going to see tornadoes today. And so that's something to pay attention to. So watch this moisture as we move it on across through the afternoon. This is when this afternoon we get on into the evening hours. That moisture plume it starts to maybe diminish a little bit in strength. So you're seeing low 60s to mid 60s down along the coast. And then we go on through, that gets really kind of skinny. Look, now we're only seeing transport of 50s into Georgia, Alabama, into Georgia, into South Carolina, 60s confined down here to the coast. So those greens don't quite make it in. That moisture transport gets interrupted potentially with convection or just weak flow. And then watch what happens as we get on into tomorrow. Now, tomorrow we're looking at dew point recovery in the eastern Carolinas into the 60s, so around I-95 and east. This is where the threat really seems to become more maximized with as the thunderstorms push in here. They're going to have a little bit more fuel to work with. And then that all pushes off by Wednesday night, overnight hours. And then look at this dry air, just boom, right behind this cold front. It sweeps through, dry air comes in. Everything's gone by then, but we're still going to have strong winds in the wake of that system. So just because the line of storms is gone does not mean that the system is no longer impacting you, because it still will be. So that's the moisture content. So putting that together with the essentially the instability, the measure of how much that air may have a tendency to rise and how quickly. This is instability. We need instability. If we don't have instability, we can't lift the air, and the air doesn't go up, and you don't get clouds and precipitation. So we need instability. Instability is measured in what we call CAPE. I've talked about this before. And so Cape, we look at Cape at the surface, we look at Cape in the mid levels of the atmosphere to see if it continue, what the trajectory of that air parcel is going to do once it gets up here. Is it going to kind of slow down or continue upwards? And so we're not going to get into all that today, but just know this is sort of the surface-based Cape. So values, when we start to see around 1,000, these numbers in the thousands, that's much better than numbers in the 300-400 range. Even 500 could do it if you've got the right wind environment. We call that kinematics. Thermodynamics and kinematics make thunderstorms. Kinematics is wind shear, essentially. So contribution of wind to the overall thunderstorm development. And thermodynamics is the measure of instability, moisture coming in, heating, creating an environment for an air parcel to lift. So we're looking at both of those things, but CAPE is a measure more of thermodynamics. So we're looking at, look at this, 1,014 down here over Louisiana. That's why we think the threat's a little bit higher here. You've got better moisture return, better convergence in Louisiana of that moisture content, and it brings it on in. And then look at the CAPE. It just sort of diminishes as we get on into the evening. Those dew points don't quite creep up as much. So surface-based CAPE is really going to be lacking. If we had strong 1,000, 2,000 joules of CAPE in this area, we would see a major tornado outbreak. What happens is that CAPE is fuel for the thunderstorm. The air goes up in the thunderstorm, and you get these big updrafts. And if there's wind shear, directional change with height, then you get spinning, rotating updrafts. If you have too much shear and the CAPE's very weak and it can't really make the thunderstorm, there's no vigorous updraft, the shear will just blow it apart. And so you've got to have a balance there. That's why this stuff is so hard to forecast. But if we had CAPE values of 1 to 2,000, man, you'd really see a major tornado outbreak here. Thank goodness we don't. So this goes on in through the day tomorrow. And look, not very much shows up here in North Carolina. You get this little band that comes through. There's going to be, the way it's going to work here in the east is you're going to get this sort of this band of convection that comes through ahead of the cold front. So you're going to have a little band out like this, and it's going to push through, and then the actual cold front's still going to be way back here. And until that cold front goes through, you're not going to be able to rule out thunderstorms. There still could be some thunderstorms along that cold front, but the big majority of that is going to be way out here ahead of the main line. And so this will be your main line of convection out ahead of the cold front. Sometimes that happens, and that's going to be one of the cases today, through the course of tomorrow. That's what's going to happen. So the other thing that we look at is wind turning with height, wind shear. So you've got wind shear in the lowest level of the atmosphere, so the lowest mile up off the ground. And so look at this. These values, when you start to see these yellow values, that's very impressive. Red's even more impressive. And so you get these, we're in a what we call a low CAPE, low instability, high shear environment. And you see this a lot of time in the spring and the winter time. You just don't have enough heating and dew point recovery to give you large CAPE values. But look here, as we get into this afternoon, into the evening, you've got good turning with height over Louisiana up into Arkansas. So look at that. So that's going to come through big values up here in Arkansas. Fortunately, we just don't have tremendous amount of instability. And so that's sort of maximized over in Louisiana like we saw. But again, don't let your guard down, because all of this shear, I mean, all it takes is one thunderstorm to be able to sustain itself the right way, and you've got big time wind energy available to turn these storms, produce a tornado. There's even a potential for a couple of longer tracked violent tornadoes. And so we're going to watch and see how this all unfolds. But that shear just moves on to the east. There's lots of wind energy, as I said. So you're seeing these shear values not decrease like we saw some of that CAPE decrease. You're seeing shear values maintain. And look at that. They go into North Carolina, up into West Virginia. Strong shear, strong helicity. This is called helicity. Strong helicity values. And it all migrates off by tomorrow afternoon and evening, and you're really out of the woods in terms of the tornado threat. So as long as these reds and yellows exist, you have an opportunity for strong thunderstorms and tornadoes. Sometimes the shear can overcome the lack of CAPE. So that's the environment that we're in. That's what we're watching. And then the other ingredient that we need is to get strong winds down is a low-level jet. And we've been looking at this as well. This is our 850 millibar jet. So this really picks up as we get on into, look at this afternoon. It's about 1 o'clock this afternoon. These values are 60, 70, even in the white here, we're looking at 70 to 75 knots. That's going to be in the 80, 85 mile an hour range. And so that's very, 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 that's crazy strong. This is anomalous. This is not usual. And so we'll come here and pull this out forward. Look at this, Tennessee, Alabama into Georgia, big time low level jet. So when thunderstorms come along, they suck up more moist air, and then the downdraft spits it out. And the downdraft can bring this momentum. So all of this air that's up here in just off the surface at 5,000 feet, it can be transported down through the downdraft of the thunderstorm. And when that happens, it hits the ground, it speeds up, and you get big time wind. So you could see gusting 60, 70, maybe even 80 miles per hour in some of the stronger storms, transporting this momentum, this wind from this 850 millibar, this 5,000 foot jet down to the ground. So that's going to come across and weaken a little bit, and then re-strengthen again as it gets into the Piedmont of North Carolina up into Virginia. So you've got the threat all the way up here. So just because of this low level wind field. And so look at that. That's going to get out of here. There's the circulation for the main storm. There's high winds in the low levels behind the storm too. So that's the prompting of all of that, those blizzard conditions out there. So you're really seeing all this stuff just crank on out and off to the east. And we're done with it by Thursday, but you still have strong winds. Look at this. You still got 30 to 40 knot jet at 5,000 feet, and that strengthens a little bit more as we get on out. So we're going to stop there because that's the end of our severe threat for this particular situation. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you here, this is our depiction of the actual, here, let's go to a different display. This is the depiction of the actual line of storms as it comes through. So this afternoon, we're going to put this on in Texas, Oklahoma. You're under the gun. Look at that. And you got even the model showing a few supercells developing out ahead of this. If supercells develop out ahead of the main line, you're going to see the potential for those to really take advantage of the wind shear environment. And so that's where you could get your stronger tornadoes. Otherwise, you're going to see spin ups mostly along in the line. And those could be weaker tornadoes, but they're still, even so, a tornado is a tornado, whether it's an F1 or F2. EF1 or EF2, you have to pay attention and take cover because they will destroy a lot of objects. And so put this on in, and so look, Louisiana, Arkansas, as we go into, let's just go back just a little bit. So we're looking at essentially 11 a.m. March the 4th. So we're going to put this on out. So this afternoon we get on into 1, 2, 3, into the evening, into the overnight. We start to get into the evening. We push that line out into Mississippi, up into Tennessee, Alabama. We're looking at overnight tonight, 10 o'clock, into Georgia by 1 a.m. And you've got a pretty robust line here around 3, according to the NAM. Some other models kind of break this apart a little bit. So we're going to have to watch and see if the wind shear can overcome the nocturnal cooling that's taking place. And if we get any of those supercells out ahead, we really could be in some trouble in those areas. And then this goes on in, it sort of breaks apart. So the line kind of now is starting to feel the early morning hours. It's breaking apart. We're the coolest part of the day. And you still have activity here. You move on toward the midday hours tomorrow, Wednesday, into Raleigh, into closing in on Charleston, Myrtle Beach down here, coming through Central Virginia, closing in on Norfolk, Richmond, and then to the coastal areas. And then the NAM tries to develop back along the front, like I told you, that little front's back here. The NAM tries to develop a little bit of convective activity there too. So that's going to all push off the coast by tomorrow afternoon, evening. Things are going to start to wind down. The wind threat is going to be kicking up though, and we're going to see winds gusting tomorrow evening into Thursday as well in all of these areas. I expect wind advisories to be issued here. So that is it. The bottom line here is pay attention across the entire southern portion of the country. Pay attention in all of these areas that you're seeing, me showing you here, even up into portions of the Great Lakes area. So all of this entire area here, pay attention, very close attention over the next couple of days. You can see all kinds of weather hazards. If rain develops out ahead of the storms, that could limit instability. So there's some things kind of competing, as I said before. So we're going to watch all of that, but these are the areas to pay attention to. Keep your weather radios handy, have a way to get information, and especially at nighttime when you're asleep and it's very difficult to understand what's going on. Make sure you have alerts turned on. So that is the severe threat. Coming up next, we're going to take a look at the cold side and the potential blizzard conditions that exist. So on the cold side of our storm, we've certainly got the potential for heavy snow and high winds. We're not talking about feet of snow, but we really don't need feet of snow to cause major disruptions. So if we look here at our hazards map again, we see our main areas of concern for snowfall, and that is essentially from this area all the way over here all the way up into, and I'm really using nice technical terms here to describe it, from here to here with stuff and things falling. Let's do that again, except do it in a more proper way. So from western Nebraska into Kansas over to Missouri, the northern corner of Missouri, northwest corner of Missouri, much of Iowa, into Wisconsin, into the UP of Michigan, back through southern Minnesota, down through South Dakota. That's where we have the potential for stuff. Stuff is a technical meteorological term, by the way, that's simply an amalgamation of various meteorological dynamics that are too many to number. So they're innumerable, and therefore we have a big area of stuff. But in this case, stuff is snow, high winds, cold weather. That's what we're looking at. That's the kind of stuff we're looking at in here. And this is going to be a rapidly changing situation. So what's happening here is rainfall. Let me go up here to my weather, my other display. So the system is winding up. It's way back here toward Colorado, and this is going to be winding up and really strengthening rapidly. And what happens is you get into the afternoon and evening tonight, that low pressure winds up, you get this massive deformation band that takes place. That's simply an area of lift on the backside of the storm. You've got strong frontogenesis in the mid levels where you've got air coming together. We'll just say it this way. You've got a boundary between air masses that's strengthening. That boundary is strengthening. It creates lift in the mid levels, and you get strong snow bands. You've heard of snow banding before. That's what that is. And you can see that reflected here. Look at this. Snow banding is starting to break out in Nebraska down into Kansas, and up in here you can see these little darker areas. That's snow band. And so this storm is really cranking up now. You're starting to get some wind energy associated with that transported down to the ground. And you're seeing the rain rapidly. You're not going to see big corridors of mixed precipitation here. It's going to be raining, and the next couple of minutes it's going to be snowing. And so that's how it's going to happen. And the snow is going to come down heavily in these bands. We're talking about 1 to 2 inches per hour rates possible, for a couple of hours. And you're seeing thunder snow. There's convective elements here, so you're going to see some lightning. You're already seeing some lightning up in these areas. And so you're going to see lightning. Here's some thunder snow in some areas. And where these bands set up, that's where you're going to find the most snow. So we're looking back here in Kansas to Nebraska, 2 to 6 inches. And then that gets a little bit more as you get on up here, and we'll see how that kind of plays out. So rolling this forward, look at this. Snow band moves into Nebraska, well, look at this. It's really wrapping up. As this thing wraps up down to the 980 millibar, maybe in the upper 970s, you're going to get these strong gradient winds, and the cold air really wraps around behind the storm like this. And so you got a really big area of snow now kind of wrapping in on the western side of the storm. And this is where your heavy snow is going to be, right in here. And you can see these bands kind of setting up like this. I'm not drawing it so well, but that's where that'll happen. And so this band of snow will move on to the north and to the northeast as the system itself moves to the north and northeast and strengthens. And these isobars here, tightly packed like this, show you how strong the winds are going to be. We're talking about gusts from 30 to 40 miles per hour, all the way up to 60 to maybe even 70 back in this area. When you start to get up in here, you're going to see sustained winds 20 to 30 and gusts up into the 50s routinely, with some gusts making it into the 60s all across this entire area. So even where it's raining, it's still going to be gusty. So watch out for that. High wind warnings are in effect. Winter storm warnings are in effect. Blizzard warnings are in effect. And so you can see those snow bands just sort of pivot around this system as we move it on forward. And that moves up to Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan, where they're going to get the lion's share, I think, at the end of the day of the snowfall totals. But anywhere back in those areas, you're going to see blizzard conditions, blowing snow, even 4 inches of snow with blowing around. You're going to reduce visibilities. Do not drive if you can help it through this. This is going to be an intense system. It's going to be quick hitting, but it'll be intense, and you don't want to get stranded out there on the roadways. The winds, as I said earlier, are going to pick up in earnest as we get on in through the day. So around this afternoon, 4 o'clock, you're starting to see those winds really kind of come up here. Look at this, gusts into the 50s back in Kansas and Nebraska. And that just strengthens as that low-level jet strengthens. Gusts in the 50s, moving through Iowa, and really strengthens again tomorrow up into Wisconsin. You don't have blizzard warnings up here because the gusts aren't going to be quite as strong because your low-level jet's down here, but you're still going to see gusty conditions. So blizzard warnings up, and then that moves on out of the picture as we work in through the day on Thursday. Now, what about snowfall totals? We talked a little bit about this, but this is a European model. We're just going to show this, run this out forward. So by tomorrow afternoon into overnight tomorrow night, all of your snow pretty much is fallen. This is showing, from Iowa up into the UP of Michigan here. You're looking at anywhere from the model showing 9 to 10 inches. That could happen. I mean, there's a lot of precipitation that's going to fall. Really, a lot of that's going to melt probably early on, but then it'll start to accumulate. It'll be hard to measure, though, because it's going to blow all around. But you could see as much as 8 to 10 inches of snow in some of these spots. I wouldn't be surprised to see some amounts over that, but really a wide area of 2 to 6 inches. And then you start to get into these heavier the heavier snowfall up here as the storm really intensifies in those snow bands. Instead of moving northwest to southeast, they might sit in one spot as the low kind of moves, and they kind of pivot around. So you see that oftentimes with these strong systems. So we're going to watch for that, but that's one of the reasons for these higher amounts here. And so very dangerous travel will occur up here. Probably going to see some power outages, like across much of the South. You're going to see high winds, and so I would expect some power outages. So have your emergency kits handy. And that is the cold side of the storm. That's most of the snow that's going to fall is going to be in the areas that I showed you. And so now we're going to take a look at the general wind threat from the storm, and then we'll rapidly hit the last couple of weeks. But before we do that, let's hear these messages from a brand new sponsor. At Cold Rain's Weather World, as you know, we are a small channel in the sea of much bigger channels that are out there. We have 140 subscribers, which is great. We're growing rapidly, and I appreciate every one of you. And I really sincerely thank you for being here and spending time with me. I enjoy talking about the weather, and hopefully it helps you to understand what's kind of going on and some of the mechanisms that drive it. But in the meantime, we got to keep the lights on, and to do that, we need sponsorship. We don't have the luxury of having some of your major sponsors, but we will take what we can get. And today, I am excited to bring to you a brand new sponsor. Today's sponsor is Fantastic Finish Funeral Foundation. Are you dead or know someone who is? Well, if there's too much churn in your urn, or if your eternal interment has you rolling over in the grave, or if you're just tired of dealing with those other funeral service providers who can't seem to get it done the right way, then pick up the phone and give Fantastic Finish Funeral Foundation a call right now. Our energetic and overly enthusiastic morticians are standing by to help. Is constant exhuming becoming too exhausting? Then take a load off. Are your friends always scoffing at your coffin? Well, not anymore. At 4F, we'll dig deep to meet your needs, both in the grave and beyond. Forget about musty catacombs and no more careless cremations. Whether you're in the ground or spread around, we'll make sure that you finally rest in peace. And security? No problem. All of our vaults are fully encrypted. So if you need more room in your tomb, then give us a call. We promise you won't live to regret it. Fantastic Finish Funeral Foundation. Rest right. No checks, money orders, or CODs. Promo codes not accepted, and all discounts expire at midnight. Thank you, Fantastic Finish Funeral Foundation. Okay, so we're back at you with the end portion of our show. It's been a long show today, and I appreciate it if you've sticked around all of this time. I would have probably tuned out. I shouldn't say that. It's my show. I would probably actually watch my show. But if I was watching somebody else's show, I might tune out. But if you've stuck around this long, thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. And we're going to look at the end of the show here. And so check this out. This is the GFS model, and please do not focus on these actual storm systems that roll across the country in terms of their exact placement or strength. The model has no idea around strength or placement yet. But what we want to see is we want to understand is, are we entering into an active pattern? Are we staying in an active pattern? Are we going to be quiet? And what do different models say about that? So that's kind of what we're looking at here. So we've got our big storm system in the middle of the country today. That's going to move on off, bringing some rain to the northeast. And then the next system comes in. Look at this, already getting its act together. We saw that on the satellite picture earlier. See how this ties up? Isn't that neat? I tie it back in. I'm trying to anyway. So we see that satellite. We saw it on the satellite picture out here in the off the coast, and now that's working on into the Four Corners region. Look at that, another system getting its act together over the Heartland area, the Great Central Plains, actually. And then that doesn't seem on the GFS anyway that it's going to strengthen rapidly and move up into the lakes and create a big severe weather threat. It kind of breaks it apart as it goes on to the east, and there's a little trailing wave in the southern stream, and that goes on by. We're not looking at the jet stream today, but you could see this like I show you every day. There's a southern branch and a northern branch. Kind of right now we're in an active pattern. It's just kind of moving west to east. Sometimes you get these buckles like you did today, and you get this big storm system. But right now we're looking at just sort of an active energetic pattern. Here comes another one onto the west coast, and this one winds up a little bit more, and it looks like it's got a representation of a stronger cold front, some more snow back up here in the northern plains into the Great Lakes, and that really winds up, look at that, over the Great Lakes. So potentially a strong trailing cold front again. So again, don't focus, as I said, on the strength of the storm, exactly where they're placed. The models kind of show a strong storm one day and not so much the next, but we're in a pattern that could yield these type of systems. So we could see another major weather maker as we get into the next 2-week period. So, and I'm not doing a good job of telling you when the time is, but this would be Thursday, March the 13th in the morning. It moves on out, and then Friday, another little system trailing behind that. High pressure comes in for a little bit. Here comes another system in on the west coast. Guys gonna get plenty of rain out here in California and Seattle and Oregon, or Washington and Oregon, Seattle, Portland, down into Sacramento, and portions of Southern California eventually too. So here comes another system. It sort of winds up, heads to the lakes, brings another shot of snow across the border states, and then another system bringing a cold front through. So that's what happens. I mean, over the next 2 weeks, you're going to have one system move through, and then you're going to have a day or two of nice weather, and then a new system comes in. So it's going to be, you're going to see some sunshine, but it's going to be intermittent. That's what the GFS is showing. European model kind of shows the same thing. Here goes our system winding up, bringing those storms. The next system kind of comes in, and it doesn't really do all that much with it. You get a little bit of a reflection in the subtropical jet. This is over the weekend. And a little clipper kind of coming into the northeast. So you folks in the northeast kind of get a couple of clippers here and there. And then the next system comes in, you get a couple of days break. Here comes a new system, 991 in the plains. Why is there a 991 low here and no precipitation at all? Somebody explain that to me, what the European is trying to do here. I'd love to hear that, but it's, man, this thing is just baffling to me right here. Okay, maybe it'll get down to 960 with no precipitation. Wouldn't that be a record? Nope, nope, nope. There, finally we get a little precipitation, a little snow up in the lakes. And here's some, what is this? A broken up cold front, probably limited moisture return, but still, give me a break. Euro, let's get it together. You're supposed to be the Euro, not the GFS. All right, so here we go on into the 258-hour range. This is like day 11. Look at this, 974, barely got a little bit of light precipitation out here. Strong winds, I guess, 976 in the middle of the country and some light precipitation. Really not sure what kind of physics are going into this model, but if you have a 976 millibar low in Oklahoma, I assure you there's going to be precipitation all over the place here. So the bottom line is, you got one system moving in, you got another system moving out, you got another system moving in, boom, 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 all over the place. Now what's happening over here? See, what is this, tropical system trying to develop? That's silly. Anyway, we've got just an active pattern going on, folks. So don't let your guard down in the next 2 weeks. We could see another strong storm or two develop that could be a substantial severe weather maker and high wind maker and snow maker. So that's what your pattern looks like for the next 2 weeks. I've already advanced this too far, but this is your European ensemble mean temperature 850 profile. This gives you an idea of where it's going to be warm at the surface and cold at the surface. And so oranges are warm, blues are generally cold. So you see what's happening here. You get a cold shot followed by a warm shot followed by a cold shot. As this system wraps up here, this is a pretty good representation of this actual system that we're in. You got this warm air wrapping around in the warm sector, and then you have cold air plunging in behind. So you're going to have some chilly weather behind the system with some strong winds, but that wraps up, moves on out. It's a progressive pattern. Warm over the south, cool over the northeast into the southwest. Look at that. And the cold front comes through, and you get another big blast. This is out as we get into day 8, day 9, closing in on day 10 here. So next week, March the 12th, we're looking at warm, we get into mid-March, we're looking at warm over the east. Another system will move into the west and bring a big batch of warm air out ahead of it with strong southerly flow. So next weekend, March 15th and the 16th, looks like it might be nice and warm, at least the first part of the weekend. And then we get a cold front that comes in as we get into Sunday and Monday, the 17th and 18th, Tuesday, 16th, 17th, 18th. And then we moderate and get, it starts to get back toward normal. The model tends to smooth it out sometimes as we get into the end of the period. But it's up and down temperature pattern, up and down precipitation pattern. That's the kind of pattern we're in. Watch out for strong storms and all of that good stuff. So that is your long range outlook. Precipitation amounts, just so you see this, European ensemble seeing the biggest footprint of precipitation over here. So that wasn't your long range outlook. We're still in the long range outlook, by the way, if you didn't notice that, but you probably did. So look at this. So big precipitation amounts depicted by the European ensemble. We're looking at 2 inches potentially over a wide area of the eastern portion of the country. In the Rocky Mountains, the Great Basin, back into the Pacific Northwest and down into California, you're seeing a lot more. So maybe in the neighborhood of 4 or 5 inches up to 8, as much as 10 inches in the mountains. So very active pattern. It's not going to stop anytime soon. And then your snowfall probabilities of 1 inch or more of snow. We saw this the other few days ago, and this was way up here. We had it in the Northeast, but wasn't much here. So that's how fast things can change. That's why this is not really, I show it, but it's not entirely the most useful thing, because this is it's just a model. It's just telling you what the model thinks, right? Is there really an 80% chance of snow in these areas? Maybe, maybe not. But in this case, since we've already got snow falling, we know that this is going to take that into account with this big storm. So the bottom line is not a tremendous amount of snow for most of the country until you get way up here into the plains and into the Great Lakes and into the Northeast. Mid-Atlantic pretty much shut out on the model down to the southeast, southern tier of the country, which you would expect in the spring. We need a big Gulf storm to come up and if you want to get snow in these areas. So that's what we're looking at long range wise. Now we're done with the long range. And that brings us to the answer of today's trivia question. Today's trivia question was, what is the most powerful type of lightning discharge? Positive cloud to ground lightning, heat lightning, intra-cloud lightning, or spider lightning? What a tangled web we weave when we talk about spider lightning. Okay, so the answer is positive cloud to ground lightning. How about that? So I'll tell you a little bit about this. We're not going to get into lightning mechanics, but negative lightning is the most common type of lightning by far. Makes up about 95% of all lightning strikes. And that occurs when negative charges from the cloud, way up here in the cloud, are transferred down to the ground. I'm talking predominantly about lightning strikes. And so negative charges are brought down to the ground. But however, there are times when positive lightning occurs, and that basically originates in the upper parts of the cloud, in the anvil top. When you get those thunderstorms, you get that little anvil kind of blow off, the cirrus blow off, full of positive charges. There are other parts of the cloud that are positively charged too. And so in those situations, the lightning bolt originates in those parts of the ground, and it brings those charges down to the ground. So it carries a positive charge, and positive strikes, as I said, make up less than really 5% of all lightning strikes. The peak charge can actually be much, much stronger than a negative charge, 10 times stronger in some instances, and it can yield 300,000 amps and as much as 1 billion volts. So those will shake your windows with great efficiency, and you'll see those from time to time. So stay away from all lightning, but especially positive lightning. And that is the answer to today's trivia question. It's been a good show. It's been a long show. I hope I've helped you kind of understand the situation today that's kind of unfolding today and tomorrow, and really a little bit down into the future. And hopefully you've had a little fun along the way. I have, and I appreciate you being here. So now, as I said earlier, we're going to go ahead and get into lightning mechanics and dynamics. And well, I guess that means we don't have time to get into lightning mechanics today. So with that, this is Cold Rain bidding you a fond farewell and reminding you, if you didn't like the weather you saw today, there's always another model out there with better weather on it. It's your job to go and find it and share it with me in the comment section. Take care. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.